the fifth Eurobond that, well, for now, perhaps we could describe it as having been suspended. We are looking at that. What are the implications moving forward? Some quarters are saying that indeed the attempt or the Eurobond for $1 billion was rejected by investors, and that is an indication of the fact that investors don't have confidence in our economy. Government is saying, on the other hand, that no, it isn't as a result. But government is not going to refinance it at any price, so it's actually suspended the whole process. What are we to make of this? Is a speculation of investors rejecting the Eurobond by reason of the fact that they were offering higher interest rates. Is it far-fetched? Mr. Johnson.
You want to start with me?
Yes.
I'd have thought you'd start with the NDC representative.
No, I'm just, we know the NDC position. We know the NDC position, so I just want to start.
That's the government's position already. So
would it be, far-fetched for speculations to be ongoing that it was due to high coupon rates that were being offered by investors? Looking at the trend of the interest rates from perhaps 2013, we saw it rise in 2014, and then shot up to 10.75 in 2015. So, and looking at our debt to GDP ratio over those years, would it be out of place for such a speculation?
At the tail end of the last discussion, if we don't have some degree of protectionism in what we do, we are going to benefit. Because the Singapore's did that. Look at where they are.
Investors rejected it, or whether investors didn't reject it? I'm trying to.
For me,
it's neither here nor there.
It's neither here nor there.
We didn't get the funds.
We didn't get the funds. How do we move forward? You know, we like this kind of speculation, and then our media will take it up, and for the next 1 month, we'll be talking about it. When the actual meat we need to be able to tender and make sure it is cooked well, we leave it aside. So, I would like to start from the sinking fund bit. So the finance
falling back on that.
Yes, falling back on the sinking fund. The sinking fund is being supported by what? The oil revenue. A drop in the oil price will affect the sinking fund. So if the oil price drops further, right now it's hovering between $40 and $50. It's been hovering for the last probably month around that. If something happens now and it drops, will that not affect the sinking fund? Will we be able to now pay domestic debt? And so we should look at it and look at it holistically, whether what the finance minister is saying would help us to be able to clear most of these debts that we have.
So does it mean that we're not going to go back to fund,
well, we might
to source funds from the international financial market?
But as the finance minister said, we would not take anything just because we need the money. But it will get to a point where we might...
We don't have a choice.
Yes, we don't have a choice. We might have to go back and renegotiate with the IMF. We might have to go back and find other means.
Because I was going to ask, are we in a position to be calling the shots, really?
Are we? Have we ever been? If you go to the bank and you take a loan, your hands, your fingers, your everything is in the mouth of the bank.
Including those of your other family.
Exactly. And if it so happens that you cannot pay that loan back, what does the bank do?
They come after you.
Exactly. They come after you. So let's look at it and look at it very critically. We've taken, you narrated a number of bonds that we've taken over the duration of time. Some are getting matured, some are yet to be mature, some are into the 2030s.
Right.
And our children and children's children would have to come and pay it. Do we have, even if we're going to take it from taxes, do we have the capacity in terms of making sure that the economy is strong enough to hold the shocks? A strong economy holds shocks. Do we have a strong economy today? What has caused us that weak economy we have had? Yes, we talk about a drop in some of the our primary commodity prices and all these things. But these commodity prices we talk about, and these two parties have been in power all this while. What have they done? come back to that same question. What have they done to add value to these things? So let's take gold today. If the price of gold drops, does the price of gold drop with added value gold? Does it drop? It doesn't. It's even a much better market. You go to Saudi and all they do is gold. Do they mine gold there? No. Where do they get their gold from? From countries like Ghana. So if we are not looking at being able to strengthen the economy, the domestic debt that we have, that we are trying to make sure that we are able to pay off, is just going to escalate, and the interest of it is going to go up. Because listen, before any finance minister, if he has a pot of money, the first thing he would do is to satisfy debt, than to satisfy investment.
Especially one from the international financial market, which involves private entities, not the bilaterals or multilaterals. They'll come after you.
So it's a question of being able to grow the economy. It all boils down to the economy. And if you're not growing the economy, you go out for debt. How do you pay? With situations like we find ourselves in today.
Great.
Now, the finance minister is coming back. He's going to come and tell us where the sinking fund is, where we're going to get the money. But we have to be very careful. Yes, we are hoping that the 10 project will come into being very soon. We are hoping that with the 10 project, because of the huge deposits of gas, we'll be able to sustain electricity. We are hoping that the 30 contracts that government has signed, where oil and gas is concerned, will come into fruition. Exploration and production will start. So come 2020, 2030, or 2020, 2024, we'll have more companies producing oil and gas. But it also depends on the benchmark revenue that the government chooses. And if that benchmark revenue is way out of the price of oil, we would still find ourselves not being able to satisfy our domestic debt.
Right. Mr. Dongo, so the fifth Eurobond has been suspended. There are no clear indications as to whether we'll go back there or not. In terms of sourcing funds, we are quite in a fix there. In January 2017, the first Eurobond is maturing. We need to pay up. Funds. Getting funds is problematic. And let me just quickly refer you to the minister's, the finance minister, when he was presenting the review of the budget in the supplementary budget, indeed acknowledged that we are not meeting our revenue targets. How are we going to get money to deal with our debt obligations?
Yes, I think first we need to situate this discussion within the context of the normal practice in raising funding on the international market. A roadshow is basically to try and explain to investors what you want, how you want to use that money, and what mechanisms are in place to be able to pay them when they finally mature. And it is to exhibit the prospect within the short, medium to long term of your economy to be able to repay those monies. And normally market conditions change, and sometimes do change very fast. And so over the years, I'm yet to see a Eurobond between 2013 and now that immediately after the roadshow were able to float. In 2013, when the first roadshow was done and market conditions were not favorable, it was postponed. It was postponed twice before government then found an appropriate conditions and then floated it. In 2014, a similar exercise happened. It was postponed 3 times. In fact, last year, just last year, the Eurobond was postponed twice. All because you want to read the mood of the market. You want to find the appropriate timing in order.
So in other words, we are likely to go back.
So if now government feels that as at the time they did the roadshow, just like it happened in the past, the market conditions are not appropriate, and therefore government wants to wait to see how market conditions will improve in order to float, I cannot see how that is a seal of disapproval of the management of the
government. Great, but on that, what, so timing was a problem
yes,
then?
I want to come to a number of other issues for us
but
to properly understand.
If we're looking at market conditions and everything else that would be perhaps the investors would be looking out for, why did we have to do that? Because people have reported, and the take on there is that at a time where you are having issues with IMF, for instance, you know, which also raises issues about credibility, because one of the reasons why we went to IMF, or the gains we were going to get from IMF, was credibility. so that investors would be like, okay, yes, if IMF is supporting them, then yes, we could actually also go there. But where you have IMF actually raising issues and you have issues to iron out, at that time, was that the best of times to actually go look for?
You see, the IMF has milestones. At every review process, you have certain milestones to meet. At the third review, some of the milestones that had to be met had to do with some enabling legislation that were pending in Parliament. And they were just passed before Parliament rose. So one, the Bank of Ghana Amendment Act was a requirement. Two, the new Public Financial Management Act were a requirement. So because these had not been passed by Parliament, they could not present their review to the board for approval. Okay, it is not because Ghana has missed key indicators in the review. In fact, as a matter of fact, the World Bank, the IMF agrees that Ghana had met almost all the requirements except these two key legislation.
But when you're looking at a zero financing by the central bank, and you have the act being amended to say 5%, it's a reduction from 10, but it's still 5, which clearly shows that there is a likelihood that you may resort to the central bank for support.
If you allow me, I want to build from a certain perspective. There is a huge chunk of misinformation that is out there, and that is informing these debates. In the first place, some have said, because the economy has been mismanaged, that's why the investor community is not willing to invest in our bonds. Yes. Do the facts support that? And I say no. In 2015, investors in the international community were willing to buy our bonds. Okay, what was the economic indicators in 2015 that encouraged them to invest, and the economic indicators of 2016 that is discouraging them? Has it deteriorated?
Well, not really, but the interest rates, for instance, is an issue.
So one, the GDP at the time was 3.9, and investors were comfortable. Today it is 4.9. And you're saying that investors are not comfortable with an economy that is growing at 4.9, but were comfortable to invest in an economy that was growing at 3.9. Two.
Should have been growing more.
But we're looking at the interest rates, Mr. Adongo. See the interest rates from 8.25 to 10.75.
No, that is a different matter. Pricing is a different issue. You study the market in order to find the appropriate time so you can price properly. But I'm saying that the debate is whether or not the international community is not comfortable with the management of the economy. And I'm saying that the indicators do not support that. The other issue is that as at last year, around this time, the cedi had depreciated by some 17%. Today, it's depreciated by 0.02%, less than half a percentage. And you're saying investors were comfortable with a depreciation of 17%, but are not comfortable with 0.2%. Inflation at the time was 18.7%, and investors were comfortable. Today, it is 16.3%. They are not comfortable with a lower inflation. At the time, the budget deficit was how much? It was somewhere around 6.7%. Investors were comfortable with that. Today, we are dealing with 6.3, moving towards 5%, and investors are not comfortable. So I'm saying that it has everything to do with timing than the management of the economy. That is all I'm trying to, because the economic indicators that influence their decision to invest in the 2015 Eurobond have significantly improved now. And therefore, if it was purely based on the confidence of the Ghanaian economy, you would have to see them rush to invest. But it is the timing of that particular flotation, and not because the economy had been mismanaged. The other
very well. Let me move on to the west side. Nana.
Where the proper bombers are.
The fifth Eurobond we suspended. Are we likely to go back or not? And if not, how do we take care of our revenue inflows and our debt obligations?
Again, this is not one of my best grades. I'm not
your teacher was absent from class a long time.
No, I wasn't paying attention.
Okay.
But I think what's crucial, ultimately, is that it's quite embarrassing that we've been put in this situation. That's the political reality, economic reality. Is it a matter of timing? Yeah, why not? Which investor wouldn't consider time as a factor? an economy that was growing at 8-point-something% grows at 4-point-something-3%, and you get investment because they might hope that things will change, and there's no evidence of that. Yeah, you could put up an argument for timing, but was that the case? We should be interested in exactly what is causing it. Why is it that in an election year we can't raise the money? Is it maybe a history of looking at an election year where you overspend by some 600 million, and up to now we still don't understand what that was for, and people don't feel like they should do the proper accounting to the people for that? So investors will not be interested in you. Fundamentally, we have a weak economy. You raised this matter, which is, like I said, because I've been paying attention in class, I didn't know, and thanks for the information. If payment is due soon, do we look like we'll be able to pay? Therefore, timing. Should I go for this one? Will they be ready to pay when it's time? That's what people would look for. So I think for me, it's very embarrassing that we're in the situation we're in. We're not telling ourselves the truth about our failings. We cannot say that when we're growing at 4-point-something, when we could be growing at 8-point-something, and we've done it before, we should be pounding our chests. When the economy is not stable, when the Ghanaian is not benefiting from things that it would boost his or her thinking and her energies to produce more and everything, things like the fact that oil prices have dropped, and so we should reflect in our fuel prices. The fact that we have a serious energy problem, and nobody is telling us the truth, from the president down to his quote-unquote lowest political in charge, be it a deputy minister or whoever. Nobody is telling us the truth. When somebody finds the truth and tells us, then insults are rained on the person. People like Dr. Baumia. So the reality is that that investor who really and truly cares about his or her money and doesn't is not your politics or your political orientation that interests him or her, but the investment they're making, they expect a return on it. When they weigh all the factors that or indicators that give them an idea of what to do, timing is a part. And the timing is to do with who's in charge and how they are dealing with issues.
But Mr. Dongo is raising the point here that, I mean, times when relatively, perhaps you could say conditions were not as good as now, we still had investors buying.
And I'm saying, if the same investor will look at those very factors and look deeper than Mr. Dongo is interested in letting us see. For example, that growth that you claim, how real is it? 3-point-something to 4-point-something.
250 million of that money already through the sinking fund.
Like I was saying, that growth, how real is it? Over the next 3-5 years, if we stick to this type of economic management, is there hope? That investor will look. Or you think they just look at, 3 is going to 4. No. They'll look beyond that. What were the other things you were raising? Inflation. What if it's pretentious? You inject money or whatever it is that will tone inflation down for a little bit. It drops to 2%. When you get your bragging, inflation is gone to 9%, now it's 8, it gets to 18%, and you want somebody to take you serious. What are the factors that have led us there? You don't tell us the truth about what you are doing, and then when the money comes, you turn it into the wrong places. And so it's not encouraging the manufacturers we were talking about earlier to produce more. It's not encouraging people to do things that will let our economy grow. They have to literally hand to mouth if the distance is even close enough. That's how bad things are. And so this is the cost. It is a real cost. The truth is that there's a failing in the management of our economy that has led us to this point. When somebody, what was the percentage?
Please wrap up so I move to...
Very well. No. What was the percentage the last time that we were offered at? And even that one we complained.
10.75.
Now it's being offered. When somebody comes here and he gets 10%, now it's 16%. It's like the...
but that 16% is coming from...
16%.
For the 5th Eurobond.
This one that they went to. That's the offer.
But is that confirmed?
That was what was being offered.
It was 11.
That was what was being offered. Now,
whatever it is was more
so
than
my
10%.
wrap up on that.
Nana, please, I need to move on to
10 to 16%. It's like how they dropped from 80%
we are running
to 75%.
out of time.
They
Doc,
think it's all right.
your take on this, the 5th Eurobond,
very
funding constraints and all.
I think I don't have that much to say, but very quickly, if you look at the topic that is being put to us, Ghana's Eurobond fiasco. what does it mean to our economy? And when you say something is a fiasco, it means that it's a blunder. I mean, there's something that is not right.
That's somebody's opinion.
Yeah, that's the caption though. But when I listen,
and it justified
That's the opinion of the
no, but
fact.
that's the
So,
caption.
yes.
Yeah, that's the caption. So it means a judgment is being passed that there was a fiasco or there's a blunder. But when I listen to my colleagues, especially to Mr. Isaac, he gives instances to more or less to diffuse that position that is being held. And to a reasonable extent, if the facts and the data that is being provided are accurate, I tend to agree with him. Because he started from 2013, 2014, 2015, and 2016. But you see, Abana, there's an interesting dynamic when it comes to this issue. It's important to note that this Eurobond that we are trying to raise is a Eurobond that we are raising to pay off a debt. Another Eurobond. 2007. We are raising Eurobond to pay off a Eurobond. So if I owe, things fall apart. I owe this man, I can't pay him. I go to you, borrow to pay him. I mean, it's telling, and it's worrying. It's worrying in the sense that normally you borrow to develop, and based on that amount that is borrowed and what is used for, you pay off that loan based on what is accrued out of it. So if we are borrowing again to more or less to pay off a debt, then it's an indictment on us.
And an investor will not make
Let me land very
Yes.
quick. And listening to my honorable brother again, he gives a chronology of 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016. It looks like Ghana will be becoming addictive to what? To
And with
borrowing.
each one, there's an increase.
I mean, we are
in
becoming
the
addicted to borrowing, and I think that is unfortunate, and I think that needs to be stopped.
Great.
We
All
can't-
right.
we
Cool.
can't-
They
So
loan billions of
we'll be
dollars
moving on
borrow.
to. I think we have just under 8 minutes to touch on some
keep
issues.
it
So
all to the west.
let's. I'll start from you, sir.
Clarify a few issues.
Briefly, like a second.
Yeah, briefly. Yes.
A second, and then we go on.
I think we need to understand that when a government borrows, it is not for the fun of it. We have a budget. The budget that is approved by Parliament has a deficit component. And so going to borrow is an operationalization of financing that deficit in the budget. It is not as if beyond the budget deficit, you are borrowing money for something else. And so that has to be understood, that as long as Ghana runs budget deficit, they need to borrow in order to finance that.
Well, but listen, gentlemen, let him run, please.
Mention when we ever ran a balanced budget in Ghana.
No, that's fine. I mean, yes, we were yet to get that.
to pay debts.
That's fine. Yes.
What do they want to use that money for?
Pay debt.
What do they use the $750 million for?
Yes, that's what you
What do
argue.
you use
That's
the
what you
$750 million
continue to
for?
do.
We are moving on to CDD reports. The survey
What do you
reports.
use for the $750 million
How
for?
embarrassing.
Gentlemen, we have
Pay
just about 6 minutes to go, so please briefly touch on this and then we go.
wasted two.
The CDD survey report, which is looking at popular opinions on issues at stake in the 2016 elections, and among other things, it's talking about the fact that 7 out of 10 Ghanaians seem to be believe that the country is heading in the wrong direction. Also, Ghanaians, half of the people, or more than half, are of the view that the president and members of parliament have performed well on their jobs. So that was a split. But for the heading in the wrong direction, you had 70% thinking that way. Briefly, what our take is on this. Okay, no, I'm starting with the West, yes.
I would have thought to start
yes,
from the East.
please.
Well, I mean, we'll
Briefly,
take-
let's
well, I
touch
think,
on
I'm not
and then
very-
look at it within the bigger context of polls as well.
Very quickly, I think this is an empirical study. And when it comes to empirical study for us, there are so many things that we look out for. One, you look at the objectivity of the study. Two, you look at who is conducting the study. Three, you look at the instrument. And I don't want to look at all of them. Let me just touch on one or two things. The instrument that was being used here was interview.
Face-to-face, I think,
Face-to-face interview for 2,400 participants or respondents within a period of 2 weeks. Abna, the research was administered between July 2nd to July 18th, 16 days.
Yes.
The question that I asked, who conducted the interview for the 2,400 people? Where were they conducted? For how long? And most importantly and most informant, when you conduct an interview, it's a qualitative study. What it means is that the responses by the respondents are normally given out in oral, in written form. So, ask Adongo, what is your perspective about this? What Adongo says is brought out. But here, the data that is being provided is quantitative data. We are talking of percentages. Percentages in terms of looking at certain variables. You understand? So I think there's a little bit of a problem there. That said, look, if you ask me as a Ghanaian historically, I've not believed in polls. Because polls in this country have not been that objective. You understand? Somebody will always
You think
say,
they've not been objective?
No. In terms of political polling, I mean, look at the history of polling in this country. They've not been very objective, and legitimately so, because in terms of even the sampling, in terms of the understanding of the respondents regarding what they've been asked, it's a little bit problematic.
Great, Doc, let me move on to Mr. Dongo. Your
Yes,
take.
I think for us in NDC, what this only does is to motivate us to work a lot harder. Because it is a reason MPP has always won polls and we have won elections. They are very comfortable with biased polls. And I can tell you, when you look at the sampling, okay, if you put the three northern regions together, Upper East, 2.4% of the people that were interviewed. Upper West, Upper East, I think 4.1%. If we put the whole of the three northern regions together, plus Volta region, the respondents were less than just around 10% of the total people interviewed. Whilst Ashanti region alone constitute 19% of the people who were interviewed.
So you're raising issues about
Eastern
the
region,
methodology.
Eastern region, 10%. In fact, Eastern region alone put together is equivalent to the three northern regions plus Volta region put together in terms of sampling. And we know that MPP has been winning their elections in two regions, and that's Eastern and East and Ashanti. And so this is the kind of research we are dealing with. But nevertheless, we are motivated by that conclusion to work a lot harder. But I'm saying that CDD should not be losing their credibility with this type of
So you're raising issues about
if you want to do it properly, the northern region alone is about 30%. Okay, you add Volta region and you're giving them less than 10%, and only Ashanti 19%, Eastern region alone 10%, and based on that, these two regions are taking a decision that is generalized for the decision of the whole country. I think they must come again.
Very well, Mr. Gentile.
The survey was conducted from a sample size of 2,400 adults. Now, that 2,400 adults, is it a good representation of Ghanaians? The Ghanaian views?
It's a sample.
Look, I know it's a sample, but is it a good sample to take from? Look, we are all aware that there are certain things that this government in power hasn't been able to achieve. Very much aware of that. That the ordinary man cannot afford 3 square meals a day. The basics of which an ordinary man can use to live is not there. And so far as I'm concerned, polls have always got it wrong. Look at the United Kingdom. It will tell you, mine is on the day. If something changes, some material thing in our economy changes, it can shift the elections
On the day.
to one side. So I don't go with polls. Yes.
So why do we continue doing them anyway?
Yes, well, they need to satisfy the people who sponsor them that they are doing their work. So for me, that is neither here nor there. The other thing it does is that at least it informs the general public as to, if they are not too sure of where the state is or where we are, it gives some kind of information. But when
But
it
if you're
comes to
raising credibility about
when
the
it-
thing, is why should the public even pay attention?
Well, CDD is a credible institution, and so we take that whatever they are doing is credible enough. Whether it is true, whether it would influence the elections, is another thing.
Great.
Mine
Nana.
is on the day.
Sure.
Just
Just a minute, and then
I ended up with a minute, huh? One, we should stop belittling polls and encourage people to tell us the truth. It is one of the best ways of being able to tell what the public wants, especially if you want to serve the people. So stop belittling polls.
Yeah, but the polls too might
Stop.
have their own slant on it.
You see,
Mr.
Objective.
but you see, it is up to you. For example, if the sample, if the you cannot go around
Then are you
serving
saying this
25
because
million
it seems
people.
to be in the favor of the opposition?
That's a very sad question you've asked me.
I'm just asking.
I'm saying, first of all of us should appreciate what polls do. How can that be in my favor? When you do that, it allows you to let the Joe public tell you, the person who wants to serve them in one way or the other, what they want. So when you now tell them that these things are not, when they see somebody polling them, they will tell them a lie. So let us build a positive image about polling. 1. 2, therefore let us want people to tell us the truth about how things are going on. One of the ways you do it is to pose the same question in different ways. And then it's up to you, the analyst, to glean out the truth. Is it true that the public thinks that the president is doing well? The presentation says he's got some 40-something% rating, which is higher than the nose. Yeah, so he's doing well by 40-something%. Do they think the MPs are doing well? By the same 40-something% or so, they think so. How do people feel about Ghana and how things? 70-something%. It's the same question asked in different ways. When you go and talk about the president, Ghanaians are afraid to attack their leadership openly. It is a matter of fact. So let's deal with that truth. So they tell you things to make you feel good. Now, when you ask them a very general question that they can deal with directly, they tell you their truth. The truth is that things are not going well.
We need to
and
wrap
so
up.
that is what is there.
Yes. So this is all the time we have for today's discussions. Thank you so much for making the date with us. And thanks to the panel, Dr. Ahmed Jinapor, Nana Fedwa Jemano Foyata, Mr. Kwame Jantua, and Mr. Isaac Adongo. Do have yourselves a very good weekend and a productive week. We'll see you same time, same place next week. Bye-bye.